Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to today's video. We have a Slav defense, starting with c6 to see if white would like to transpose into the Caro. But no, we just have a normal Slav, and I quite like the Slav because you can play it in some aggressive ways depending on the line that white chooses. But also, it can be quite an interesting positional system, again, depending on how you play it. Knight BD2 is not a line that I'm familiar with. It's apparently the Briar system, which I'm going to admit I have never really seen before. I don't really have much extensive study in the Slav. I've never really properly studied it. I've kind of just considered the Slav to be an opening where I can just play normal moves and generally be fine. And I like to play this triangle system. You can call it the semi-Slav, the triangle system, whatever. And effectively, we are locking in our light squared bishop for the time being. I don't like developing it to f5 normally, because we can be hit with queen b3 things, where b7 and d5 can be under a lot of pressure. And those can be kind of uncomfortable situations. So I prefer to just keep the light squared bishop there for the time being, and then either go b6, bishop b7, or play for e5 to open the bishop up in the future. So for right now, we can develop this bishop to d6 or e7, get ourselves castled, and then figure out which pawn break we want to go for. Normally, you're going to go c5 or e5. My opponent's going for this fianchetto setup, which you do see a lot. It's kind of like a Catalan. I guess it might be transposing to a Catalan. And, you know, we're basically playing a Caro Khan against it, which is why I like this. So d6 is the more active square, and I am going to put my bishop there, because while you may be thinking we're staring into nothingness, the idea is more so to support an e5 push, so we'll get castled. And also this rook could come to e8, and if our bishop is on e7, it's blocking the rook scope of the e5 square, which again, we are likely going to be playing for. But for the time being, let's bring our knight to d7. Opponent goes queen c2, and I think we've transposed into a normal line of the Slav. A lot of these types of moves are pretty normal. I mean, the knight normally comes to c3, but I guess it's not that big a deal, because on d2, it still supports this e4 push, which white is often playing for. So I suppose white is ready to play e4. And one of the things we have to be aware of by putting the bishop on d6 is that white could play e5 and fork our minor pieces in some lines. So we do have to be careful of that. Let me think here. So what if we go e5 immediately? And we have something like take, 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 and take. That looks pretty good to me. Let's go. Let's go for e5. Now, white, he kind of does have to take this pawn. Or that pawn. Because if we get pawn e4 in, he could be in trouble. Now, the question is, can we go e4 immediately? Well, no, because the knight just takes, and then we're down a pawn. So we could take back with the pawn. However, if pawn takes and then he takes here, we're going to be left with an isolated d-pawn. So we should consider the possibility of taking with the knight. Now, what I expect is that he might try to play e4, kick our knight back, and then play d5, and get a passed pawn on d5 after an exchange. Now, he doesn't have enough control of the d5 square to execute that anyway, so I don't think that's too big of a concern. So let's take with the knight. And you can see the point of putting the bishop on d6. He goes knight c4. That is a move I admittedly missed. Okay, so he hits the bishop. Also applies pressure to the e5 pawn. Now, we don't immediately need to respond to this. We could throw in a move like knight b4 with tempo on the white queen. Although I feel like we might be asking for trouble there. If we move our bishop back, we lose a pawn. That's probably not good. So we may be forced to play queen c7 or queen e7 to defend the bishop, which is not ideal, but I don't think it's the end of the world. So if like queen e7, take, 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 rook d1, take, take, something like that, and then like bishop e6. I mean, maybe we have to watch for e4 ideas, but even just moving the queen should be fine. So I think we're all right. I think queen e7. I prefer the queen on e7, just because on c7, I don't know, maybe there's some issues with the c file. Not sure. But that is a nice move. I still do think taking on d5 with the knight is better, though. Because while taking with the pawn does control the c4 square, I mean, I'm not really a fan of take, and take. Because after that, the d-pawn is a massive target for the white bishop. This knight can come to f3, hitting my bishop. And then he can bring his bishop to g5, pinning my knight, which is going to struggle to hold on to the d5 pawn. So even if we lose the bishop pair here, I still think this is a more practical way to go about it. And what I also like about playing this triangle system that we've done is that you'll notice it is relatively reminiscent of some Caro-Kann structures. Obviously, this pawn isn't on e4, but it is still reminiscent. But we have this small pawn chain on b7 and c6, which I'm a massive fan of, especially playing against a fianchettoed bishop, because it kind of blunts the bishop's scope, which I like. So let's take on d6. Now, if take and take, bishop to f4 is fine, because we can take the knight with check, and after he takes back, we can move the queen somewhere, so that should be absolutely fine. White does have a nice bishop pair in that position, but this bishop is seeing nothing, and this bishop would also be seeing nothing. So I think it's fine. Okay, he goes rook d1. Sure. So obviously lining up with my queen. I can't play e4 because that just hangs a pawn. So okay, I assume I probably have to move the queen back to e7, so that I don't block the development of this bishop by being on e6. And then maybe we even want to go e4, f5 if we have the opportunity. If bishop g5, f6 might make sense. Okay, let's go queen e7. Just getting off this file. He may be playing for e4, but I thought I could play knight to b4. Not sure. Because if e4, knight f6, d5, black gets, after this trade, he gets the passed pawn. Sorry, white gets the passed d pawn, which I mentioned previously. So if we can throw in a move like knight to b4 with tempo, if e4 is played, and then take, then we have a 3-on-2 on the queen side, which should favor us in endgames. My opponent goes a3, taking up the b4 square, so no knight to b4. Again, we should definitely consider the move e4, pushing in the center, taking some space. Also keeps the center closed, which in theory helps the side without the bishop pair. Also means that our knight is very secure on the d5 square if we can prevent white from playing e4, because he can't play pawn c4. So if e4, if knight d2, f5, f3... Oh, then we have something like knight e3 or pawn e3. So if here, knight g5, f5, f3, h6 takes... That's not going to work. We could go bring our knight in. So here, 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 knight here. Actually, we could also consider e3. And then we are threatening the knight. I think that's the way to go. I think if we can secure this pawn on the e4 square, we are going to have a great position. Let's go f5. Try and lock the pawn in place. Because again, if we can stop pawn e4, our knight on d5 is going to be an amazing piece, because it won't be able to be removed. And also, if this pawn on e4, if we can keep a hold of this, this bishop is locked out of the game. It can try and come to h3, but like, for the time being, that would trap the knight. the knight would have no moves after we go h6. Which is why I've been calculating f3 to try and immediately cut down my pawn chain. But after e3, knight is under attack. Let's say f4. I mean, my knight is defending this very nicely. h6, knight h3. Bring my knight into f6. I mean, it looks pretty damn nice. Okay, he goes h4. I guess he's trying to do this sort of maneuver, which is fine. Maybe he wants to try and get the g6 square and secure it with h5. But if his knight goes to f4, I'll just snap it, so it can't get there. Okay. This is good. This is good. Now, we could just play a slow move, like knight 7 to f6, just supporting our other knight, which looks perfectly reasonable. If f3, we can still go e3, I suppose. I'm not sure if it helps to throw in h6, though. Kick the knight back, play knight here. If knight here, take, bishop takes, knight here. Pretty nice. Let's go h6. As long as this knight can't make it to g6, which we do by preventing knight to f4, then this is fine. I think. We could put the knight on b6. That's also possible. Not sure it's any better there, though. I think it's better on f6. This diagonal I'm not too concerned about. I mean, we can just move our king. We also have bishop e6 if we really want it. b7 is defended by the queen. This looks like a pretty nice position. Now, I would love if I could have a dark squared bishop sitting on d6, but I don't. But it's okay. I'll take this knight. I can't let it get to g6. I'll play knight to d5, hitting the bishop. This change in the pawn structure not only hangs a pawn, but even if it didn't, it doesn't look good. Bishop e5 I did miss. That is a good bishop. That is a good bishop. I think it's okay, though. Bishop e6 looks fine. Just developing. Well, effectively completing the development. And then again, endgames, if we can make this 3-on-2 work, could be good. I mean, I know this pawn is currently controlling our c-pawn, but c5 could be an idea to try and dislodge the bishop in the future. We could play for e3 or f4 in the future. Looks very reasonable. I'll start with bishop e6. I think this is clearly where our bishop wants to be. We may even move the knight and bring the bishop somewhere over here. We could try and squeeze the white position by using our a-pawn. You know, maybe b3 is a nice outpost. And white is up on the clock, but I feel like although we don't have a bishop pair, I don't think the white position is all that impressive. f3 can't be played because of knight e3. Even if you could execute f3, I might be able to go e3, or just take, perhaps. Okay, rook ac1, really trying to stop me from going c5. I really like the look of the move a5, though. I really like that. I don't think I mind him offering me a queen trade. If he tries a4 to stop me from advancing, he gives me the b4 square for either my queen or my knight, which looks very powerful. I like this. I do like this. Again, we can consider e3, but I'm not sure it is any good. So let's go a5. If I can get a4 in, I'm going to be very happy, because my a-pawn will be clamping down on these two pawns, and we can maybe play for this in the future. We could also consider lifting the rook to apply pressure to the b2 pawn, particularly if our pawn makes it to a4 and can be defended. We get our bishop to b3, that would be nice. Just taking away important squares for white. And yeah, I don't think we're in a major rush here. Again, we just need to keep an eye on moves like pawn f3, but it can't be played yet. Okay, my opponent offers me a queen trade. I feel like we should accept. I feel like we should accept. I think we're doing well structurally. Let's take that. Okay. How do we continue? I mean, g5 looks reasonable now that queens are off the board. Again, f3 could be played. We still have knight e3 hitting the rook and the bishop, which doesn't look bad at all. We may be going into an opposite color bishop position. Potentially. Knight b6 looks interesting to try and bring the bishop in somehow. Or maybe even rotate to one of these squares. D-pawn is not strong. D-pawn is not strong. I can lift the rook, but it will hang this for the time being. We could go a4, trying to create a weakness. I do like this idea of knight b6. I do like this. The reason is because knight a4, I think, is a threat with a fork. Now, even if knight a4 is met with rook c2 defending, we have bishop b3 skewering the rooks. Now, if knight here, white could try something like rook c1 and meeting knight b2 with rook b1, trying to skewer the knight and the pawn. But that would hang this rook for the time being anyway. So that wouldn't even be possible. Even if it was, something like knight c4, rook b7, maybe knight e5, maybe. I think we have options. a3 could be hanging as well, and we get a passed a pawn, up a pawn. We can bring the bishop to d5 to consolidate our pawns. That looks very reasonable. I think that although white has the bishop pair, they're not particularly active, right? Now, I do have to be careful. If either of the white rooks make it to my 7th rank, g7 could become a problem. We may even be trying to go for a move like knight d7. That's possible. Now, I'm not really sure I want to be taking the bishop currently. I think I want to play a move like rook d8, not blundering this, but... Okay, he goes bishop c7. So on knight a4, I assume he wants to take. I have to take, bishop takes. Interesting. We could go knight c4, guarding the pawn. That's possible. Knight c4, also putting pressure on b2. If a move like pawn b3, I mean, we could even consider pawn b6, but I guess it's rook b6. So I assume we take on a3, and then he takes here, and then b3 is hanging anyway. If here, rook here, could even consider b5. I guess it hangs c6. Something like takes, rook here. Knight a4 comes with tempo. Rook takes, bishop takes. b5. Our knight is pretty nice there. Yeah, that looks quite interesting. So knight c4 is definitely an option. I don't think bishop b3 is helpful because of rook c1. We're just encouraging the rook to a better square. So if knight here, rook a5, bishop a5, knight b2, then rook b1, and I drop the b7 pawn. Not sure there's anything else that's brilliant. I mean, we can throw in bishop c4, but I'm not sure it does much. So I think knight c4. I think knight c4 makes sense. And I think trading this for this isn't bad because a3 is going to be incredibly weak. I mean, even if he gets his bishop to b4 to hold on to the pawn, it's not... I'm not sure it's completely sustainable. I guess the bishop could come to c5 to hold on to both pawns. That is a possibility. I don't know. I still think we have good play. I still think we have good play. And even if his bishop can hold on to the pawns, they are still weak pawns. And we could look to exploit them later on. So, okay. Knight on c4. It can't be bad. If we get the opportunity, we could put a bishop on d5 to support the pawn on c6. Keep an eye on the pawn on e4. Again, if f3, we can take. We can also come here. We have options. We could take if we really want. We can also push. And maybe that creates spatial problems for white. Because even if he opens this bishop up, it's just staring into nothing still. Unless he can play for d5, I suppose. So f3 might be a good move. It just weakens both of these pawns significantly. So, okay, we are down a bit on time, which is not ideal. But I think we've got a decent position here. So hopefully we can work this into a win. Okay, rook c1. I think that's probably one of the better moves in the position. So I'm going to assume that forces us to take this. But our knight always has a way out. So I think we're fine. If here rook b1, we have knight a4. Hitting the rook, so there's no time to take on b7. So let's take. There's no pawn d5. We're up a pawn momentarily, but a5 should be dropping at some point. I mean, to be fair, if rook takes, we could play knight c4. Rook here, we could play knight a3 and come back to b5. Pressure here, closing down the b file. As long as we stop pawn d5, that should be a very nice structure. Yeah, as long as d5 doesn't overload our c pawn. That's interesting. That's interesting. So, okay, if rook takes, we could also take. Bishop takes. But I'm just thinking knight c4, bishop b4 with tempo on my rook. Rook d8, bishop c5. Takes with the bishop. Okay. That does make sense. That does make sense. I just didn't consider it. Feels like I should be able to exploit it in some way. But I'm not sure I can. I could just go bishop to d5. I could go knight a4. Hold on, where's this rook going? Is it going to e5? It's got to hold on to the bishop, doesn't it? Bishop d5. Cutting the rook off from the bishop. Bishop to b4. Saving itself. I guess that works. Yeah, I think that works. Can I go knight c4? Because if rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes, I can take the bishop and I'm up an exchange. So my knight can come to c4, which also covers e5, which is useful. If bishop back to b4, I guess my knight is a bit out of place. He's threatening to win the knight as well and open this up. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. So maybe knight to a4 is the way to go. Knight a4, rook e5. He's bringing the bishop to b4. I don't think I can stop that. I think he's found a good way to deal with this position. Bishop c4 is a move. It just looks wrong. I mean, knight here doesn't work, so bishop b4. So if bishop here, why wouldn't bishop to b4 work? Yeah, I think it probably still does. I think I need to evacuate my knight regardless, so... maybe I want this structure, the bishop on d5 and the pawn on b5. Okay, he goes rook e5. Now, I don't have to move my bishop. I could play, like, rook e8, but it weakens the f-pawn. Now, if he takes this, I can take his bishop, though. So if I go rook e8, well, I could go rook e8. I could go rook f6. Not sure it looks great, though. Bishop here. I can't go rook d8 because he takes that. b5, take. He takes here, that's no good. I think bishop d5. I know I'm giving him the e7 square, but I can always challenge him. So I don't think that's a problem. Okay, so if I go here, he takes. I guess rook f7. He may be going for f3 now. e3. Ooh, that, I don't know about that. What about this maneuver? Bishop f1. Yeah, I guess. His rook is not in the best situation. Good knight b6. Bishop c5, knight c4, or knight d7. This could be a problem. Okay, bishop h3. Alright. So if I do this, he's going to take. So I guess I support the pawn. Yeah. If I can play h5, I might. Just to stop h5 from him, which he goes for. So if here, I can take with the knight. Then he takes here. Then I go here. Then he goes here. Not sure that's great. If I push, he takes. Don't really want to be giving up a pawn, do I? Could go king g7, and if king takes, that looks reasonable. I guess getting my king a little bit active is probably helpful anyway. Maybe this pawn can be used as a battering ram later on. e3 just feels off to me. I am low on time, so that's not ideal. Not ideal. But a3 is weak. White has the bishop pair, but my structure is relatively good. Obviously, my bishop is kind of like a big pawn, but it still controls a useful diagonal. And if f3 can't be played now because it's not supported by the pawn, and my bishop controls f3 too, so okay. If white goes rook b1, knight c4, rook e7, b5, or maybe take, and then b5. Trying to weaken the a3 pawn by stopping it from advancing and cutting off the b file for his rook. Looks reasonable. Where's my knight in all of that? My knight's on c4. Yeah, so if he goes here to defend, it might work for now, but it's incredibly passive. and that's not a bad situation for us to be in. Equal material, but a super weak A pawn is fine by me, because then only we can win. See if we can grind this endgame. Okay, so he takes on g6. Let's take back. The king is defending f5, so f5 is safe. Knight c4 probably on the way. And this rook will be forced to trade itself off, which I assume is good. Okay, let's go knight c4. It's a very good knight. I guess we don't have to take, but like, I don't want to take with the king, because then I drop this pawn. If I take with the bishop, no, it doesn't really feel right. I could go b5, though. I could also take, but then I'm walking into pins, which I probably shouldn't be doing. That feels irresponsible. I mean, the white rook can't escape, can it? Yeah, let's go b5. I think my pawn wants to be here anyway. You know, my bishop supports c6, which supports b5. And the pawn supports my bishop. Doing a good job of playing against this bishop. If takes, again, obviously not king takes, dropping the f5 pawn, but bishop takes. And c6 can't really be accessed anyway. And then he can go rook to a1, ensuring that a3 is defended. But then, I don't know, only I can win. He could try bishop f1, trying to trade his bishop for my knight to go for an opposite color bishop position. So bishop f1 here, maybe I move the knight. Go back to b6 perhaps. And then maybe we try to go bishop c4, offering a bishop trade. Rook c3 makes sense. Okay. I mean, I'm not in a rush, am I? f5 is weak, granted, but okay, yeah, he can just give me a check, actually. So my king probably wants to stay on g6, but that's all right. That's all right. Worst case, we draw this, but only we can win because of how weak a3 is. I can't really say the same about my pawns. They're fine. I mean, I could even play for a breakthrough. Yeah, he does go for bishop f1. I go knight here? Bishop e2. My knight doesn't have many squares, does it? I should probably just come back. If bishop c5, knight a4, I could try and win that position. Bishop e2. Okay. So he's effectively just waiting. Not like he can do much anyway. Let's just go king g6, because I don't want any checks coming. King g2. We could try this. I'm not sure if it's helpful. Here. Rook moves. Probably just bring my knight back. I've got to watch for sacks on b5, but should be fine. Could offer a bishop trade. Could offer a bishop trade. Again, this is kind of like a two-result game. Either I'm going to win this, or we're going to draw. I don't see how white wins. Even though he has the bishop pair, the a3 pawn is just too weak. Way too weak. I'm going to assume my next plan is probably bishop c4, offering this trade. And as long as a4 doesn't overload my b pawn, which it doesn't because my rook can take, we should be fine. The problem for white is that his bishop can't do anything useful other than just protect. That's all it can do. But I feel like, yeah, I feel like bishop c4 is the way to go for us. Again, I'm monitoring the possibility of bishop b5 take and something like rook c5, but I don't think it works. My bishop's protected. Now, if I go bishop to c4, then rook c6 check could pick up the knight, but okay, let's offer a trade. Yeah, he declines. Now I can bring my knight here, though. Although maybe he's going to try and play for a5, but that would always hang the bishop for now. If I can take this, I might. Yes, he moves. But I assume he's playing for this. Yeah, I've got to be mindful. Got to be mindful. This isn't so easy. Knight here. Here. Ah, I feel like I've allowed something I shouldn't have. Okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go bishop d3. Making sure my bishop isn't a target. And then we're going to go rook a6. Guarding this. Yeah, I think I've slightly misplayed that, but it's alright. Low on time, so let's not flag. We do have 10-second increment, so bishop e3. Oof, that's an annoying move. I don't want opposite color bishops. No, he's playing this well. He's playing this well. I think he's going for bishop e7. But then again, if he trades the bishop off, that weakens a3 a lot. But I don't know. Don't know. I think my knight probably should have stayed on c4, to be fair. But I was thinking he could trade the bishop for the knight, and then we'd have opposite color bishops. Maybe a draw is all I can get, but yeah, let's defend. Maybe f2 is a weakness. What does that do? I'm not sure what that does. Oh, maybe he's playing for this. Maybe. Is that a problem? This is interesting now. Here. Maybe he's playing for d5. I want to make sure I'm covering this. Also puts the king in a bit of a box. So I could try and checkmate the king. The king has no moves. I can get my knight to f3. Here. Oof, is he picking up this pawn? Hang on, though. Here. Ah, he takes. I feel like I'm misplaying this. Need to try and get round the back with the rook. So if I can, I'm going to win this. Although I've just completely blundered, haven't I? How do I defend the knight? Bishop d8. Can't really sack. Bishop here, rook here. Okay, he doesn't go for it. Okay, I'm going to cover bishop e7. I thought that was just winning. Don't know. What if he pushes this? Okay. Let's defend. I'm letting the king out, but it's still exposed. He comes back. I guess I come forwards. Maybe my attack has more ideas then. I want to drop this back so my knight can move. I completely missed that move. That's strong. I think it's time for a last-ditch effort. This king is still in a box. I can't come here, though, because the bishop controls that square. This looks pretty bad. Also, h6 is going to hang. Ah, no, I've messed up. I've messed up real bad. I can try pushing, but I've lost this. Yeah, he just takes. And then the king always has a way out. Oh, no. How did I mess up so badly? That's so bad. That's so bad. Yeah. I'll try push. Oh, yeah. No, that's game over. That's horrific. That is such a bad game at the end there. I can't believe I messed that up so badly. I mean, we were doing so well. Like, in, let's say, this position. It's equal, but only we can win. At least, so I thought. But I played some silly maneuver. Was bishop d3. I was so concerned about this, but, like, I mean, worst case, we just get a trade. I mean, is it that bad? Ugh, yeah. Knight there was terrible. I should just be allowing this. I tried to play too hard for a win. That's so frustrating. Let's jump into the analysis. Yeah, I just completely gave the game away. 89.1 accuracy for my opponent, 80.7 for me. I didn't do too well at a certain point in the opening, according to the engine. Here, knight d5 is a mistake. Apparently, I have to go cd5. And after this, I just thought I was in a horrible position. The engine seems to think it's okay. Rook d1. Bishop e6. Bishop f4. Okay. I just thought this was an incredibly weak pawn. So here, knight c4 is the best move. And queen e7 should be met with e4. I thought I could play this. Why is this so bad? What happens if I take? Bishop g... Oh, and I don't have f6 because of discoveries. Queen e7, take, rook d1. Queen e7. Here a3 is the mistake, so e4 has to be played. And if this is played, queen c4. And if I take, again, bishop g5. And I don't have f6. And if queen c5, knight c5, bishop e7. Well, neither of us saw this. He went a3, and e4 is the only move. f5 is the only move. And after h4, h6, we're better. Taking is a mistake? What? Queen f7? Okay, but what happens if he takes me? What's the difference? What's the difference here? His bishop can't... Oh, his bishop doesn't get to e5. Oh, that's the difference. So my mistake was allowing the bishop in. Right. Okay. Okay. So now a5 it doesn't like. It wants g5, a move I considered, but I thought was too risky. Taking is a mistake. Wants queen f7. And then we play on from here. e3, a4. Okay. I suppose we control the pawn breaks. I thought he could try and play f3 at an appropriate moment. Like... Although I guess what's an appropriate moment? I don't know. But I go queen c5, rook c5, knight b6 is best, knight c4 is best, knight b2 is best, knight a4 is wrong. I need bishop d5, cutting this off. And after bishop b4, rook f7, rook c2, I have knight a4. And then what's the plan? Here, 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 and g5. Let's say take this. g4, bishop back. Now it thinks we can play for a win. Okay. So knight a4 is wrong because of rook e5. Bishop b4. So e3 is the wrong move. g4 is better. And after take, h5, rook e5, g6, pawn d5, opening things up. I guess my knight's just out of the game, so that does make sense. So here, bishop h3, g6, h5, king g7, take, rook b1. We're slightly better again. I should have taken. Why? And then b5. I mean, that's what happened in the game, though, so what's the difference? I'm not sure. Rook c3 is wrong. Of h5, and after rook f1, sorry, bishop f1, knight d2. I thought bishop e2, though. Still, we give the check? And then what? We just march the king over? I don't see how we win this. Here. Let's say the king just keeps shuffling. Oh, and then we switch the focus. And the king is not in a good position at all. And we're just going to win. Ah, okay. So I let him off the hook, and then he brings the bishop back into the game. I thought I was playing decent moves, but I couldn't figure out an actual plan. And then knight f6 is where it goes wrong. Knight f6 is wrong because of bishop d6, which is what I was expecting him to play, but he didn't. Here, rook a6 holds. Then I need to go knight d... Oh, of course, knight d7, obviously. Kicking the rook out. Oh, of course. Okay, bishop f1 is a silly move. King h4, bishop e2, bishop e6, and I'm in trouble. The bishop c8. I completely missed this idea. The engine actually does want knight h7. The idea is, if here, knight g5, we're threatening mate in 1. And if this, you have to settle for a perpetual. Really? Okay. So the only way to win after knight g5 is rook f5. And after bishop f5, g4, bishop e6, and white is slightly better because he's up a pawn. Okay, I went rook b6, bishop a5, rook b8, takes, and after rook a8, I thought this just ended the game, which it does. I was going to have to sack the rook, and then I don't have anything. But he let me off a bit. Bishop e2, bishop c8, bishop g4, d5. And then I tried to basically unpin so I could do this maneuver. I completely missed bishop c3, although I'm lost anyway. I tried taking, but I can't come in behind. Like, I can't get there in time because he's going to roll me. And he's going to take and then just have an escape anyway. So, yeah, I'm just getting mated, and I hang the rook, so I just resign. Huh. That's rough. That is rough. My opponent just completely outplayed me in the endgame. In a position which I should have been better in, to be honest. But time trouble, man. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. YouTube will suggest a couple more videos to the left of the screen, so check those out if you're interested. And I'll see you in the next one.